back in the dinosaur age of the 80s. And yeah, I would bring my cassette tapes to the DJs and drive them all crazy. I was relentless. And they would see me and run.
For decades, she's been the undisputed queen of pop, a trailblazer who has never been afraid of a fight. She's an artist defined by relentless reinvention, an unshakable will, and a career that hasn't just followed trends, but created them. She built an empire by challenging norms, courting provocation, and staying true to an artistic vision so singular it shaped the very fabric of modern music. But staying at the top for over 40 years takes more than talent. It takes a spine of steel and a competitive fire that never goes out. So, who are the rivals she's battled behind the velvet rope? The competitors who dared to step into her arena? The peers who have drawn her sharpest criticisms? Now, at 67, as she celebrates another year of unapologetic artistry, we're opening up Madonna's ultimate burn book. The gloves are off. From pop princesses she felt were a little too inspired by her work, to rock legends who dared to question her authenticity, we're counting down the A-list singers Madonna has famously feuded with, and in some cases outright despised. This isn't just about petty drama or catty remarks. It's a story about legacy, artistic integrity, and the fierce battles that rage at the highest levels of the music industry. Get ready, because we're uncovering the truth behind some of pop culture's most legendary and personal rivalries. Before we get to the names on Madonna's infamous list, you have to understand why these feuds even happen. For Madonna, conflict has never been something to avoid. It's practically part of her artistic DNA. Since she exploded onto the New York scene in the early 80s, she's positioned herself as a disruptor, an outsider who fought her way in and then rewrote all the rules. Her whole career has been built on the idea that art should provoke, challenge, and never, ever be comfortable. This worldview naturally puts her at odds with an industry that often rewards playing it safe. Madonna's feuds are rarely just about personality clashes. They're almost always rooted in a deeper philosophical disagreement about what it means to be an artist. She has an allergy to anything she feels is inauthentic. In her eyes, fame built on marketing instead of raw talent, or success that comes from a formula instead of taking risks, isn't real success. It's a betrayal of what an artist is supposed to be, and, as the reigning queen of pop, she has spent her career watching new artists emerge, many of whom have been directly and profoundly influenced by her. While some might see that as flattery, for Madonna, there's a fine line between homage and imitation. She demands acknowledgement. She respects artists who take her influence and build something new on top of it. But for those she feels have just copied her blueprint without adding their own vision, what she once famously called reductive, her criticism can be swift and merciless. These aren't just spats, they're battles for her legacy, a defense of her life's work against those she feels are cheapening it. So, as we begin our countdown, remember that for Madonna, every feud is a fight for something much bigger than chart positions or headlines. It's a fight for the soul of pop music itself. Our countdown begins not with a bitter rival, but with a figure so iconic that their dynamic is less a feud and more a clash between two celestial bodies in the pop universe. The one and only Cher. The relationship between Madonna and Cher is a fascinating study in contrasts, a decades-long dialogue of sharp critiques and begrudging respect between two women who fundamentally redefined what it meant to be a female superstar. Cher, the original pop chameleon, had already been a household name for nearly 2 decades when Madonna arrived. She had conquered music, television, and film, mastering the art of reinvention long before Madonna made it her signature. Maybe it was this shared territory that created the initial friction. Theirs was never a feud fought on the charts. It was a war of words waged in interviews, where Cher, with her famously blunt and unfiltered honesty, delivered some of the most memorable and cutting assessments of Madonna ever recorded. The most infamous of these came in a 1991 interview, a moment that's now legendary in pop culture history. When asked about Madonna, Cher didn't hold back. "There's something about her that I don't like. She's mean," she said, letting the word hang in the air. But she didn't stop there. She went on to call Madonna a spoiled brat, telling a story about how she'd invited Madonna to her home, only to be put off by her rudeness. It was a deeply personal shot, painting a picture of Madonna not as a professional rival, but as an unpleasant person. In another famous soundbite, Cher offered what can only be described as the most backhanded of compliments. "She's unbelievably creative," Cher began, before delivering the punchline, "because she's not unbelievably talented, she's not beautiful, and she's rude." This quote perfectly sums up their complex dynamic. Cher acknowledges Madonna's genius, but she defines it in a very specific way, not as a gift of natural talent, but as a product of sheer will, intelligence, and an unparalleled understanding of the industry. In the same breath, Cher praised Madonna's uncanny ability to know the trends before anyone else, calling it her greatest gift. What's so striking about this feud is Madonna's almost total lack of a public response. She's never been one to suffer a slight in silence, but she has largely let Cher's comments go unanswered. Perhaps Madonna saw Cher not as a direct competitor, but as a predecessor, a titan from a previous generation whose opinion, however sharp, didn't threaten her immediate reign. In recent years, the frost seems to have thawed into a kind of mutual, if still wary, respect. Cher has admitted that they buried that hatchet a long time ago. And Madonna, for her part, even included the classic clip of Cher calling her mean in a video montage during her 2023 celebration tour, a move that felt like a playful, self-aware nod to their storied history. It was an acknowledgement that Cher's critiques are now part of her own legend. Theirs is not a story of hatred, but of two fiercely independent, powerful women who were bound to collide, built on the kind of brutal honesty that can only exist between two people who recognize the same fire in each other. Next on our list is a rivalry that was less about personal dislike and more about a fundamental philosophical disagreement on what pop music should even be. This was a Cold War fought not with public insults, but with dismissive remarks that revealed a deep artistic snobbery. We're talking about the Australian pop princess, Kylie Minogue. When Kylie Minogue pirouetted onto the global stage in the late 1980s, the press was quick, and maybe a little lazy, to label her another Madonna wannabe. She was blonde, a pop singer, and she embraced vibrant, catchy dance music. The comparisons were inevitable, but also pretty superficial. While Madonna was building her brand on controversy and constantly transforming her sound, Kylie was perfecting a different craft. She was becoming the undisputed queen of pure, effervescent, high-quality pop. Her music wasn't made to start a culture war. It was made for the dance floor. This core difference in their artistic approaches is where the tension started. For Madonna, the trendsetter and provocateur, Kylie's brand of pop was seemingly not serious enough. This sentiment was captured in a dismissive comment attributed to Madonna, where she allegedly described Kylie's music as disco for people who don't want to think. While the exact source of that quote is debated, the sentiment behind it perfectly nails the core of their perceived rivalry. It frames Madonna as the serious artist and Kylie as the purveyor of frivolous fun. This wasn't a two-way street. Kylie has consistently expressed her admiration for Madonna, acknowledging her as a massive influence. She always took the high road, positioning herself as a fan instead of a rival. This only made Madonna's perceived dismissiveness seem even colder. It was the condescension of an avant-garde artist looking down her nose at a commercial one. The subtext was clear. Madonna saw herself as the one who pushed pop forward, who broke new ground with albums like Ray of Light. In this narrative, Kylie was seen as someone who perfected an existing formula, even if she did it brilliantly. The feud, therefore, was about artistic hierarchy. Is the innovator superior to the perfecter? Then, the ice publicly thawed in 2000 at the MTV Europe Music Awards. In a huge gesture of solidarity, Madonna performed wearing a t-shirt with Kylie Minogue emblazoned across the front. It was a stunning and unexpected public endorsement, a sign that the Queen of Pop was officially acknowledging the Aussie star as a peer. That moment came full circle in a beautiful display of unity in March 2024 during Madonna's Celebration tour. In a historic moment, Madonna brought Kylie on stage in Los Angeles. To mark the occasion, Kylie wore a black top with Madonna on it, a direct callback to Madonna's gesture 24 years earlier. Together, the two icons sang a stripped-down version of Gloria Gaynor's "I Will Survive." It was an incredibly poignant and symbolic performance. Kylie later revealed that Madonna wanted to sing that song for two reasons: their shared experience as women who have survived in the industry for decades, and as a nod to their respective battles with cancer, a disease that tragically took Madonna's mother. It was a powerful statement that their shared history of survival and resilience was far more important than any old disagreements about pop music. At number 4, we have a feud rooted not in similar sounds, but in clashing ideals. This one is all about the age-old debate of artist versus entertainer, substance versus style, and authenticity. According to insider reports, Madonna viewed Jennifer Lopez as the embodiment of a new kind of celebrity, one who was famous for being famous, a product of brilliant marketing more than raw artistic talent. This wasn't about chart success. It was a fundamental critique of what J.Lo represented. Madonna had spent her career writing her music, creatively directing her tours, and crafting every aspect of her artistic output. She saw herself as a true auteur. In her eyes, Lopez was more of a brand, a vessel for a team of talented producers, songwriters, and stylists. This feud is less about public spats and more about a quiet, underlying disdain. It's a conflict of artistic identity. Madonna is the self-proclaimed, unapologetic bitch who bled for her art. Jennifer Lopez is Jenny from the block, a narrative of grounded authenticity that Madonna reportedly saw as just another part of the marketing machine. For Madonna, art was about struggle and deep personal expression. J.Lo's art, while immensely successful, was slick, commercial, and designed for mass appeal. The silence between them speaks volumes. Unlike with other rivals, Madonna has rarely, if ever, engaged with Lopez directly in public. There are no famous interview takedowns or onstage antics. Instead, there's a conspicuous absence of interaction. They operate in the same industry, attend the same awards shows, and share the same stratosphere of fame, yet they exist in seemingly parallel universes. This isn't a hot war, it's an icy avoidance. This dynamic highlights the long shadow Madonna casts over the industry. Even today, whenever a major artist uses provocative imagery or creates a controversial performance, it's inevitably measured against Madonna's playbook. Social media floods with comparisons, with comments like, "Madonna did it first," or, "You're no Madonna," appearing instantly. It proves that any artist who ventures into that territory is still, decades later, stepping into an arena that Madonna built. Their silent conflict represents a shift in the music industry, a battle fought not in the headlines, but in the space between what one defines as art and the other defines as entertainment. Are you enjoying this look into pop's biggest rivalries? These stories are more than just gossip. They're a window into the minds of the world's most driven artists. If you find this as fascinating as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our future deep dives into music history. Now, let's get back to the countdown. Coming in at number 3 is one of pop music's most legendary and deliciously shady feuds. This isn't a story of loud confrontations, but of icy dismissals, cutting interview quotes, and a fundamental clash of artistic personas. It's the diva versus diva showdown, Madonna versus Mariah Carey. The friction between the Queen of Pop and the Songbird Supreme started simmering in the mid-90s, when both were at the absolute peak of their powers. They were two of the biggest female artists on the planet, but they could not have been more different. Madonna was the chameleon-like provocateur, constantly reinventing her image and pushing social boundaries. Her art was built on concept and confrontation. Mariah Carey, on the other hand, was the vocal virtuoso. Her artistry was rooted in her phenomenal multi-octave voice, and her music was built around showcasing that incredible instrument. Their rivalry was basically a battle of style versus substance, or maybe one kind of substance versus another. Madonna, who was never praised as a vocal powerhouse, built her legacy on vision and nerve. Mariah built hers on pure, God-given talent. This difference was the fertile ground where their feud grew. The first major shot was fired by Madonna. In a 1996 cover story for Spin magazine, she lamented the homogeneity of a culture that buys Mariah Carey records, stating that while she considered Carey a very talented singer, her work had nothing to do with art. In another infamous comment from the era, Madonna reportedly said she would rather kill herself than be Mariah Carey. For Madonna, Carey's focus on vocal perfection and commercial-friendly ballads was safe, uninspired, and ultimately artless. Mariah, soon to become the undisputed queen of shade, did not take this lying down. She didn't offer a point-by-point rebuttal. Instead, she delivered a comeback so coolly devastating it became a cornerstone of her legend. When asked about Madonna in an interview, Mariah paused, feigned a moment of thought, and replied with surgical precision, "I really haven't paid attention to Madonna since I was in 7th or 8th grade, when she used to be popular." The brilliance of that line is off the charts. With a single sentence, Mariah dismissed Madonna's entire contemporary career, framing her as a relic of the past. It was a masterclass in shade, turning Madonna's own weapon, the charge of irrelevance, back on her. It defined the entire conflict. Madonna, the veteran, was attacking from a place of perceived artistic superiority, while Mariah, the newer superstar, was dismissing her from a place of perceived cultural irrelevance. From there, the feud became a cold war, defined by a frosty distance. Their rivalry perfectly illustrated the two competing paths to female superstardom in the 90s. You could be the conceptual artist who starts conversations, or the vocal powerhouse who stops them. Our runner-up for the top spot isn't a pop princess or a diva competitor, but a fellow legend of equal stature. This was not a subtle, shady feud fought in whispers. It was a loud, brutal, and deeply personal war of words that spanned nearly 2 decades. This was the epic, no-holds-barred battle between Madonna and Sir Elton John. This extraordinary public feud ignited in 2002. The catalyst was Madonna's theme song for the James Bond film, Die Another Day. Elton John, never one to mince words, publicly savaged the track, calling it the worst Bond tune ever. It was a shockingly blunt critique from one superstar to another, and it opened the floodgates for what would become a years-long campaign of public insults from Elton's side. Feuds conflict escalated dramatically in 2004 at the Q Awards.
When Madonna was nominated for Best Live Act, Elton took to the stage and declared, "Madonna, Best Live Act? Fuck off. Since when has lip-syncing been live?" He continued, saying anyone who lip-syncs when fans pay good money should be shot.
It was a direct and deeply insulting attack on her professionalism. Madonna's camp fired back, clarifying that she doesn't lip-sync, but the narrative was set. Elton had drawn a line in the sand. Over the next decade, Elton seemed to take every opportunity to publicly denigrate Madonna. He called her a fairground stripper. In 2012, after she beat him for a Golden Globe, his husband David Furnish said, "Her speech was embarrassing in its narcissism." Elton himself told an Australian news program that her career is over and called her tour a disaster. The attacks were relentless and venomous. Throughout all of this, Madonna's response was one of remarkable restraint. She rarely engaged directly. Her silence was its own form of power, a refusal to grant his attacks the legitimacy of a response, which only seemed to fuel Elton's frustration. For years, it seemed this would be one of the music industry's great, permanent rifts. And then, in April 2025, the unthinkable happened. the decades-long war came to a sudden and public end. Madonna revealed on her Instagram that she had decided to go see Elton perform at Saturday Night Live. Backstage, the two icons came face to face. According to Madonna's heartfelt post, the very first words out of Elton's mouth were, "Forgive me." In that moment, the wall that had stood between them for over 20 years crumbled. She described how they hugged and how the bitterness dissolved. Madonna wrote about how seeing Elton John in concert as a teenager had changed her life. His public criticism had hurt her so deeply precisely because he was an artist she had admired so much. Elton, for his part, re-shared her post, confirming the reconciliation. The feud was officially over, buried in a simple apology and a hug, backstage at 30 Rock. It was a stunning resolution to one of pop's longest and most bitter conflicts. And now, we've arrived at the #1 spot. The most talked about, analyzed, and dramatic feud of Madonna's entire career. This wasn't just a rivalry, it was a cultural event, a battle over legacy, identity, and the very definition of originality in pop music. This was the epic saga of Madonna versus Lady Gaga. When Lady Gaga exploded onto the scene in the late 2000s, the comparisons to Madonna were instantaneous. Here was another Italian-American artist from New York, a master of provocation, high-concept fashion, and dance pop. To many, Gaga wasn't just influenced by Madonna. She was her natural successor. For a time, things seemed cordial. But everything changed in 2011 with the release of Lady Gaga's single, Born This Way. The song was an anthem of self-acceptance. But musically, listeners immediately noticed a striking similarity in its melody and chord progression to Madonna's 1989 hit, Express Yourself. The whispers of copying grew into a roar, and the world waited for the Queen of Pop to react. Her response was a single, devastating word. In an interview, when asked about the comparison, Madonna called Born This Way reductive. That one word was a nuclear bomb. Reductive was a masterful critique. It didn't just mean similar, it implied a lack of imagination. It suggested that Gaga had taken Madonna's complex anthem of empowerment and boiled it down to something simpler, less nuanced, and ultimately less creative. For an artist like Gaga, that was a deep cut. The feud was on. Gaga, clearly wounded, defended herself, pointing out, "I write all my own mew."